You know that I like our moves, right?
Plus, I'll talk about that one. No, actually, it was. Yeah, one of my other grandmas had a heart attack because of one of yeah. Well, no, she had like osteoarthritis. So they had to help her. Dude, she is 6 months and 22 days. No, I don't.
Okay, I think we're looking good this time. I'm feeling positive.
I'm feeling negative.
This one's gonna work. There we go. Come on.
Carl. One of the people what a day.
Okay, guys, let's bring the volume back down. All right. Hey, are we working now?
Yeah, I could hear him. It was just really quiet.
Can you hear us okay?
Hello.
Hey! Hi.
Technology works.
Yes. All right. So, Carl, thank you so much for joining our class today for Interviewsday. We sure appreciate it. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to have you as our guest. So first, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and most importantly, probably explain, since our students often see on credits and items and billings, but we don't really know exactly what a producer really does.
We don't really know what we do either, so it's we get to all share this. Okay, so I was raised in Powell, Wyoming, so that's up outside of Cody, if you guys know it. What can I tell you? I went to grade school, high school there. I went to college at Montana State University. At the time, they had a really good film program. It's now a documentary program, in case any of you are interested in documentaries, but they no longer do feature stuff there. Then I moved to Los Angeles. One of my friends from high school had moved down there, so I moved in with him and 4 other guys. We were living in a 1-bedroom apartment. Spent 2 years doing that. I became my career's really weird. I have kind of a unique career in that I started out as a assistant to a famous director at the time. I was his assistant for 2 years, and then I got tired of doing that. I became an assistant director, which is a guy who manages the set and the day-to-day activities. I'm the guy who'd yell rolling and cut, among other things. And then from there, I got into television commercials, which was really unique. And I spent many years producing television commercials. And about 10, 12 years ago, I got tired of doing commercials, and I turned around and went back to working in the movie business. So I've done a whole broad range of stuff, from IMAX to 3D to studio work, that sort of stuff. So that's kind of my career. I'm specifically there are three kinds of producers. There's a creative producer. A creative producer is a person who goes out and finds a script, finds the actors, and tries to get the movie made with that information. There's another kind of producer that's an executive producer, and they're a money producer. They're people who have access to money, and they try and find people who have the actors and the scripts. And I'm the third kind of producer, which is I'm the middleman between the two of them. I'm the person, you give me your script, you give me your actors, and you give me your money, and I go out and I make the movie for you. So my base title is line producer. And from there, I'm given gifts of executive producer or full producer credit. But my job basically is to manage. I manage people's expectations. Director wants to. The director turns around and says, "I want to build this huge building and I want to blow it up." And I say, "There isn't enough money in the budget for it. Let's come up with a different idea." Or I turn around and go back to the money people and say, "The director is absolutely right. We desperately need to do this. Go find more money so we can blow this building up." So that's kind of what I do. I work in the Hollywood system. I just finished a job for Netflix. I've worked for Warner Brothers. I've worked for Fox. I haven't done anything really for Disney. I haven't done really anything for Universal, although I'm in a meeting for a movie at Universal right now. So that's kind of my very basic history. I work much better on questions. I do have a show and tell if you guys are interested in that sort of stuff. But
we have one student who was a little overly excited when we told him that you had worked on one of his favorite projects, which is I'll let him ask you about it.
Hello.
Hi.
So you worked on Blue Mountain State, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I absolutely love that show. That show is hilarious. I was just wondering, like, how did you start out, like, working on that?
So I didn't do the TV series. I did only the movie, The Rise of Thadland. For those of you who haven't seen it, it is very adult. It's a hard R. So you'll have to, I don't know, are you guys old enough to go see art? What is it, 17 and something like that? So it is Netflix, but, just fair warning. It's not something you want to watch with your parents or your little sister or brother. So let's put it that way. How I got involved on it is actually kind of weird, is that they had decided to make that movie in South Carolina. And they went down there, and one of the things to make a movie is a thing called a tax credit. And it's kind of complicated. Basically, let's say I want to make a movie for $10 million. If I go to a particular state, South Carolina, Atlanta, Louisiana, there's a whole bunch of different places you can go to. They're going to give me some money back at the end of filming. And it can be up to 30% of a budget. So instead of me spending $10 million to make a movie, I'm going to spend $7 million to make it, because the state's going to give me $3 million in a tax credit. Anyway, the long and skinny of Blue Mountain State is that they went down to South Carolina and they started prepping the movie, and I wasn't involved in it. And about 4 days before filming, they got a phone call from the state saying, "Your movie is so obscene, we're not going to let you have a tax credit." And that, of course, is the fundamental part of it. So the people in charge were fired, and I was brought in to fix the problem. And so the fix of the problem is I moved the movie up to North Carolina that didn't have any sort of content rules, and we made the movie in North Carolina. But that's how I became involved with it. I'm still good friends with Thad, Alan Richardson. I just finished producing a movie for him. And the year before that, Romansky, I don't know what Romano's character is in that movie. But anyway, I gave him, I did a TV series for him for Netflix as well. So.
Cool.
Nice.
Very cool.
Yeah. So the truth is, guys, I work a lot better with questions. So I much prefer, you know, no question is too stupid. So
We'll start turning them away.
I'm looking straight ahead. So the girl that's sitting on the couch.
What is the thing about producing that you least expected going into it?
So I didn't hear you say that again.
What is the thing about producing that you least expected to have to deal with going in?
The the thing I least expected. Well, the thing is that I moved up through the business. So I started at the very bottom by getting people coffee and doing that sort of stuff. And I didn't expect when I got to this level that I would still have to go get people coffee. So it's you're standing on set, you're next to the director at the monitor, and he looks at you and he says, "God, I need a cup of coffee." And you're quickly running over to the craft service table, getting him a cup of coffee. So I think that I expected that. I expected a little more fame, a little more success, but it is what it is. So what else? Yes, girl in the front. Lady in the front, excuse me. Can't use that word anymore.
Would you do it different?
Yes. I really love movies. I love movies a lot, and I got into a fight with the union that I belong to, which is called the Directors Guild. And I got into a very bad fight with them. And instead of resolving the situation, I just basically told them that they could do something really profane. And I then moved into doing television commercials. And one of the things that my career suffers from is the fact that I haven't been focused on any one thing in particular. I've done movies, I've done TV shows, I've done commercials, I've done IMAX movies, I've done 3D movies, I've done stuff for museums, I've done crappy industrials. I have not done any adult filmmaking, although Blue Mountain State was pretty close to it. So, gentleman on the right. Far right, my far right. You're in the blue with the red stripe. It looks blue on my monitor.
Okay. So, what has got to be one of your favorite projects you've ever actually worked on?
To be honest with you, so you asked me about that. The movies that I've been making now are just okay. I don't know. The Kissing Booth has a huge fan base. It's the biggest Netflix movie of 2018. And have any of you seen it?
Yes.
And so let me ask you, for the people who've seen it, did you, and I need you to be 100% honest, did you think it was any good?
Yes. One of my favorites.
I don't know.
Oh.
I didn't like it.
I don't know.
It was cheesy, but it's just not my forte.
It's like one of my favorites.
It is what I would call a career low point for me. I don't think it's a very good show, but it was a paycheck and I took it. When I was younger, I was working on. Now the thing is that I'm critical of it, but this is going to be a big movie for Netflix when it comes out next year. This is going to be. There's a huge fan base for it, about the same size as Twilight. So it's going to be a very successful movie. I just don't think it's that good of a movie. When I was younger and I was doing stuff like the original Twin Peaks, I was working on with the Coen brothers and doing Barton Fink. And that was just when I was an AD. That was the stuff I was really proud of because it was really creative. So I'm hoping that here very soon I get back into working with more creative directors and less commercial directors. Blue Mountain State, is everybody? There's a lot of people who've seen it. I don't know. I know one gentleman's very excited about it, but have any of the rest of you seen it? It's pretty funny. It's very sophomoric, and it has a huge following. That movie was actually made by crowdfunding. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but that's where you go on the internet and you say, "Hey, fund our movie," and this movie raised $3 million through crowdfunding. That's a lot of money, So, but I think I'm proud of my earlier work. The more recent work is just a paycheck, but it's a good paycheck. I'm not going to criticize it. So the lady in the back I'm going to say black, but my monitor looks terrible. So.
What's the TV show you worked on Netflix?
It's not out yet. It's called,
Okay.
yeah, it's Green Beret's Guide to Surviving the Apocalypse. And so it's a bunch of half hours. It's a scripted black comedy, but it's also a how-to. The two lead actors are true Green Berets, and they turn and tell you how to survive various apocalypses. So it's how to survive nuclear attack, how to survive zombies, how to survive electronic warfare. It's a lot of fun. It's very risky though, or risque. It's definitely a hard R on the show. A lot of blood and guts and a lot of dead people. Person sitting in the front.
So you were talking about, starting at the bottom with the coffee, and do you feel like you are able to do that for all positions in the industry? So like if you wanted to go into acting, or if you wanted to go into just design, like, do you feel like all of them you should start at the bottom like that?
I could no. So let me should you start that way? Absolutely not. You should start as high as you possibly can and make as much money as you possibly can. Because what is staggering to me is the lack of competence that a lot of people who are above me have. I have this saying. I have the saying that it is who you know that gets you your first job, and it's what you know that keeps your job. And that is particularly true in Hollywood. You're not going to get hired because of your resume. You're going to get hired because of who you know. And that is fundamentally the most important thing about surviving in Hollywood is your ability to network. And some of these people who are not very talented have incredible networking skills. They're very sociable at a party. They're not afraid to say hi to people. And that's not a skill set that I particularly have. So I'm getting lost here in the weeds on this one. It of course doesn't hurt to start at the bottom and work your way up. That is a great sort of thing. But if you are fortunate and you have a script and you have two friends who can act in your script, and you decide to be a director and you go direct the movie and you win an award at a festival, don't make your next job being a PA, make your next job be a director. So it's, it's a ever-changing business. So right now we're in the middle of a massive change in Hollywood. There's a huge amount of content that is getting made all of a sudden, like a crazy amount of content. And we're talking, you've got, of course, you got the major studios. You got Universal. Well, Fox is now Disney, but Universal, Fox, Disney, Paramount, Warner Brothers. And then you have the disruptors. You have Netflix, you have Amazon. And now all of a sudden you've got Hulu, which is going to become Disney. You've got Facebook, you've got Apple TV, you've got Universal TV, you've got Warner Brothers Television. All of these people are creating content. And for the next 5 years or so, it's going to be a madhouse in Hollywood of people desperate for high quality content to get people to by streaming services. So it's a golden era, but it's also like I just took a meeting with a company called Quibi, and Quibi is doing 10-minute shorts. So they take a 90-minute script and they want it to be no more than 10 minutes long. The joke is, as long as you sit on the toilet is as long as the show should last. And so they're making content, and it's basically for your generation where, so how many of you gone to a movie in the last 3 weeks? Yeah. And that is the death of conventional Hollywood right there. When I was a kid, all of us were going to the movies on the weekend. And so the content that you guys are taking in these days is entirely changed. And the way that looks is entirely changed. And Hollywood is still trying to figure out what that looks like. We're trying to see right now if these 10-minute shorts are what's going to attract you and make you watch our programming. Because 90-minute movies are not where it's at anymore, except for large tent poles. So, very few people are going to the art movies. What else? Yeah.
What is your favorite movie or show that you've worked on, and what's the one that you're most proud of, and which one do you think turned out the best?
That I worked on or that I produced?
Either or.
The original Twin Peaks series is a highlight, only because I was young and it was a massive hit, and it was the first like Game of Thrones. Everybody in the world was watching this show, and it got so bad, and I was nobody. I was low on the totem pole over there. I was not in charge of anything. I was just, I was an assistant director, but I was like the low level guy. But my phone would ring at 3 a.m, and I would have people offering me substantial amounts of money for the script that hadn't been released on TV. They would call me and say, "Hey, can we have a copy of the script? We'll give you $10,000. I'm like, that's an amazing place to be when you're nobody. So it was a very influential show. It really changed television too. That's one of the major game changers in television was that series. So, but what I'm proud of is I'm proud of the job that I do at the end of the day. If I'm on budget and on schedule or reasonably close to it, that's all I can look for. You never know. I've done shows that were so great and never saw the light of day. And I've done shows that were terrible, i.e. The Kissing Booth, and it's going to be a huge hit. So you can't, those sort of things you can't really forecast. There's somebody off to the left. I keep seeing an arm. My left. Was it stage right? I'm seeing, so help me out here, guys. You're all theater people, so.
Have you ever heard of Toronto Film Festival?
The Toronto Film TIFF, TIFF, yes.
Yeah.
It's the biggie, one of the biggies.
Have you ever been to it?
I've been to the Toronto Film Festival. I was there last year.
Oh, really? Tell us about it.
Well, the TIFF is very much it's less of a film festival, although it is a film festival. It's much more of a sales festival. And so you go to it as a film festival. There are fantastic movies to be seen, and there are great parties to go to. But what is behind the scenes is what's really important. And that is where there are filmmakers there and money people there, and they are all trying to sell a film or trying to buy a movie. So what you see in front with the stars going to the movies is only a third of that. A third of what that festival is all about. It's really about the business. That one in particular is very much a business-oriented film festival. If you guys ever get a chance, go down to South by Southwest in Austin. That film festival has fantastic movies, and it's not about the business. It is much, much more about actually just watching really great movies. So I'm not knocking TIFF. It's an amazing experience. It's just, you know, and it's Toronto. Toronto's a great city. So did I answer your question? Is that what you're gunning for?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, Savannah.
I was just wondering what your favorite part of your job is.
Fridays when my check clears.
Understandable.
It is the favorite part of my job is, okay, so I've been doing this a long time, and this is going to sound really, really messed up, but the fun part of the job is when bad things happen and I have to use my skill set to fix it. So they always say that you can tell how good a line producer is. What I do, what the kind of producing I do is what I'm like on set. If I'm running around really panicked and, you know, yelling at people, that means that I'm doing my job wrong. And if I'm sitting around in the back taking a nap, that means I'm doing my job right. I know it sounds weird, but those of us that are skilled in doing what we're doing, that's kind of a truth. If I did my job right and I did pre-production right, everything would come out, everything will be quiet and calm on set. And I do my job pretty well, and for the most part, it's pretty calm. Now, like kissing booth, so I'm spending, let's say I'm spending $300,000 a day. And that's not a lot of money, but my spend is $300,000 a day. On Thursday, we'd finished filming on Thursday, and we had our big day on Friday. We had to go to the Santa Monica Pier, which I don't know if you guys have been to Los Angeles. And at 6 p.m., my location manager, the person who's in charge of making sure the pier is ready to film, turns around and says, "I'm sorry, we just lost the pier. They're not going to let us film." And I'm like, but we told them we're going to be there. We have all the permits. We have everything. He's like, "Well, there's not enough police officers because Donald Trump's in town." And it was unexpected. And so we're now not allowed to film. And so what I was very proud of is within a half hour, I was able to pivot a show that has 80 people working and say, okay, tomorrow, instead of being at the pier, we're going to go up to Universal Studios and we're going to spend the whole day filming at Universal Studios and we'll make it work. And so that's something that, you know, things that I'm proud of. You guys would never see it, but it's where I get my most enjoyment from in doing the job.
What do you say makes a good production versus a bad production?
Being organized and communicating well are the keys to a good production. So a show that I did before, not this most recent one, but another one, the director was overtaxed. He was doing too many things. He was trying to act as well as direct, as well as produce, as well as write. And he was stretched too thin and he was unable to communicate to the crew what he needed. And he decided halfway through to go to while we were in pre-production, to go to a film festival, and left a movie for a week at the most important part. And so the whole show itself, because of him being gone and because of him being overtaxed, we had terrible communication. It was always very last moment. We're always panicked. We're always trying to figure out what he wanted because he hadn't done his homework. So that's kind of the difference. That and having money, you know, although you can do a lot of great things without any money. So
I've got a question for you, Carl.
Go.
So being the wealth of knowledge and experience that you have, I know you've also done work with on the visual effects side.
Yes.
Thanks. Tell us a little bit about that and like what is. I mean, we always see these giant groups of people on the credits about visual effects, but what's that like?
Well, that world has changed. When I did visual effects, my skill set was miniatures and blowing stuff up. I've got a bunch of pictures of things that, I could share with you guys, but basically, it's now visual effects are driving a lot of the business. You'll start visual effects before you'll start doing a movie, which means that like a friend of mine is doing a very, very large Disney movie, like something that's going to come out in 2021. So he's 2 years away from the movie, and he is starting his visual effects first before he starts filming, because they have to build all of these creatures that have never been seen before. So it's a very important part of the business. It's very computer oriented these days, although they'll still have people who are experts in how fur looks, how water looks, how water reacts. They'll have scientists and physicists. It's really crazy the people that you draw on to pull up your creative with this. But did I really answer it?
Yeah, no, it's just I know it's times in the movie business, we know how quickly things change, and it's just, especially now, it's just accelerating.
Keeping on top of it is almost impossible, and I'm sort of at that point where I just turn around and say, I don't know, we'll have to hire an expert. And it's an odd place to be, but there's no way to keep up with it unless you're doing it every day, day in and day out. And that's, for what I do, it changes every day. This last movie I did had no visual effects. The movie before was a ton of visual effects. The movie before that was no visual effects. And in that space of time between the two movies, everything had changed. I was like, oh, let's put these dots up on the green screen. They're like, oh, you don't have to do tracking dots anymore. We have a way of tracking without it. I'm like, okay, that changed. Oh, yeah, that was like 3 months ago. You're out of touch. I'm like, okay.
That's crazy.
So what else? Are all of you guys interested in acting? Is that the general take on this?
No, we have quite a different group. We've got some that are interested mostly in acting. We have some that are technical, theater side. We even have one who's even made his own film.
Oh, that's great. So my wife is she went to, I guess, what do they call it now? Southern Oregon State, and she was Oregon Shakespeare for many years. So we go down and we do Oregon Shakespeare every now and then, and all of her friends are still there working there. And it's a really fascinating, I don't know a lot about theater, and it's really a great experience for me to go down there and get behind the scenes and see what's going on at these large Shakespearean festivals. I know you guys have one in Utah, right, that you drew from?
Yeah, that's where I used to work for the Utah Shakespeare Festival down in
Okay. All right. I don't know much about it. It's a good operation from what I heard, right?
It's pretty impressive. It's a good theater company. All right, Savannah, another question.
I was just wondering, why you're so quick to, knock the kissing booth. Because I thought...
It's a personal thing. It really is a personal thing. It definitely, look, it is the most watched movie on Netflix for 2018. You'd think it'd be something different, but it isn't. It's this movie. And it really speaks to a broad generation. There's a lot of people a lot of men and women who are watching it who are thinking about, the romances that they had. So I really shouldn't be as critical of it. It was a tough movie to do. It wasn't easy because there was a lot of, the first movie was done for very little money. And these next two movies were done with a lot of money, or this next movie was done with a lot of money. And that's that can always add a level of complexity. Money can be a cure and it can be a curse. And in this particular case, it was a curse because people thought, well, we made so much money doing the first one, we're just going to go ahead and spend money and do the second one, without regards to the budget or to the schedule. And that it wasn't any fun. That made it very difficult. Yes. Woman in the black.
Oh, as a person who actually wants to go into special effects, what are great special effects to do on like a really tight budget that you can do physically?
So when you're talking special effects, you're talking, are you like interested in pyro? Are you?
I'm interested in a wide range of special effects. I just want your opinion on them.
Well, it's two different worlds. So special effects is the computer world. And so you need to go to college. You definitely need to learn as much programming as you can. And if I were, I'll get to this in just a moment, guys, about your education, but you need to diversify your education as much as you possibly can. It just because you're sitting learning how to code in C++ or whatever the coding word is for graphics these days, that doesn't mean nearly as much as your ability to be a good artist. So you have to have the combination of both, and that's the computer world. The practical world, which I'm more familiar with, I'm not unfamiliar with the computer world, but I'm much more familiar with the practical world. There's everything from model making to miniature making to blood and guts effects. You always love blowing stuff up and spraying, cow bits all over your crowd. There is pyro, understanding the mechanics of pyrotechnics. So it's a pretty broad world that you want to go into. And I strongly recommend college for everybody, but if you're going toward mechanical effects, you might want to be looking at knowing how to weld and learning mechanics and physics and then of course your art on top of it, as opposed to learning computer science and your art on top of it. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? I don't know. It's all the crack cocaine I've been doing lately. It's just been a real problem.
You're very open.
Oh, you guys are doing crack cocaine as well. I'm glad to see it. Start young. It's always good. So, I'm sorry.
I don't know how to respond to that.
Yeah, don't respond to it.
Okay.
Don't do it.
Do you if you say the kissing booth, since you produced that, will you produce the second one? Stop.
I did not produce the first one. I produced the second one.
Cassie?
When you're working on like movies or anything like that, what do you and also like the directing crew most like to see in your actors and actresses?
Wow, that is the unanswerable question, and it really is, because acting is the hardest job in Hollywood. There's no job harder than that. And it isn't that acting itself is tough. It's getting to the position where you've been offered a job to act, and that the perseverance that you are going to need to get there is phenomenal. All I can say, because I don't act, all I can say is the casting room is brutal. I believe another guy you had speak very earlier discussed his experiences with casting a little bit. I will tell you on my side, it is horrendous. It is, when you walk out of the door, the stuff that is said is brutal. And it's because we're all trying to find the perfect person for it. But it is It is a tough, tough world. Your ability to understand who the character is, to be well-versed, and to go in and perform it the way that you feel it should be performed is really important. And I think for me personally, being true to yourself and being true to what you perceive as the character is the most important thing. Because a lot of times, look, all of us on this side of it think we know what we want until we see what we want. And so I would rather an actor come in and be creative with the interpretation than an actor. I'll get 5 people who come in and will read the script exactly as it's written. I'll have one person come in and, give me a little bit different of a twist on it, and it may or may not work. It's a risk. But I'll tell you that the first 5 actors we didn't consider, and the one who put the twist on it, we did. And that doesn't always work. Actually, it probably very seldom works, but it very seldom works when you portray it. Remember, you're going into a room that's, what is it? The fact that you got called into the room is a huge deal. I don't, that's where actors make a mistake. They're like, oh, I got called into cast and I didn't get cast for it. And I didn't get cast for this. And I didn't get cast for this. Well, there are 1,000 people who sent in headshots and we let 20 make an appearance. So it is very important. You need to know that that's a plus, not a minus. So, yes.
How did you decide that you wanted to be a producer, and was there anything else in the performance and film world that you considered before you decided to produce?
Yeah, so I went to college to be a cameraman. I was going to be a cinematographer. And honestly, that's what I focused on through college was cinematography, although it didn't fully grab me. There were some issues with it that I had. And when I was a senior in college, I got a job working on a movie as a grip. And it was a Hollywood movie that was shooting in Bozeman. And so I went out on set on that. And on the last day of filming, I'd been watching the cameraman work for 40 days. And I was like, this is interesting. Could I see myself doing it? How do I work my way up? And on the last day, the director was running behind, and the line producer came out on set and started screaming at him, just saying awful stuff. You're so far behind, our last day of filming. How the hell could you let this movie down? You're such a piece of da-da-da. And he walked off set, and I went, oh my God, that's the job I want. And that is truly what happened. I was like, if I could be that sort of a rotten human being on a daily basis, I'm going to be happy. I found my happy spot. So that's honestly how I ended up moving into producing.
That's awesome. Well, that's our time, Carl. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, guys.
We appreciate you spending your time with us. Thank you.
Hey, absolutely. Congratulations on doing this. It's a great thing that you're doing there for your kids.
It's been really good. It's been just a really opportunity to open up their eyes to multiple career opportunities that a lot of them had never thought of. So thank you for sharing your insight that made a big difference. Thank you.
And if you need other people, if there's something that you're wanting to see, like my best friend's a huge music executive.
Oh, that'd be incredible.
And he's from Powell, Wyoming.
Really?
Yeah, he and I were the only 2 people that came out. So, yeah.
Okay, great. I'll send us more info over and make sure they get that calendar invite. You can send it to them. It'd be great.
Yeah, send it over to me. I'll send it out to other Hollywood people. I mean, is there anything in particular you're looking for?
We're kind of taking anything right now. Makeup would be a great one. Anybody in the makeup industry would be really helpful.
Oh, seriously. One of my best friends is doing what's that Amazon? Jack Ryan. She's on Jack Ryan at the moment.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So yes, please, that'd be a great one. We haven't had anybody from the makeup industry yet.
Cool.
Great.
Yeah, you can. I've got time. If you guys want to keep going, I've got time. But that's your call for your class.
Yeah, we've got a roll here. Next one's coming in.
Okay.
But yes, I'll definitely send that over, and yeah, anyone from, and we'll send a couple other ideas as well of what we haven't heard from yet would be great.
And you can share my email address with the students if they want to reach out and ask me questions. I'm happy to respond via email.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you so much, man. We really appreciate it.
Talk to you later.
All right, we'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Dinner. You still have not said